Um, and a lot of what you see with Zegler is really just this pretty common Gen Z mentality and approach to work.
The controversy surrounding Disney's upcoming live-action remake of Snow White has taken yet another turn, as internal voices begin to speak out against the film's stars, primarily targeting Rachel Zegler. One of the most notable voices to emerge was Jonah Platt, the son of Snow White producer Marc Platt, who has publicly attributed much of the film's catastrophic downfall to Zegler's actions and public statements. This accusation was not made in isolation. According to numerous circulating reports, Gadot, who stars alongside Zegler as the evil queen, has allegedly expressed her own frustrations with Zegler behind closed doors. Her supposed remarks were said to have triggered a chain reaction, further destabilizing what was already a very fragile public relations campaign for the film. The allegations paint a picture of deep dysfunction within the production, where communication between the lead actresses has deteriorated to the point that internal disputes have become more newsworthy than the movie itself.
That she believes that she should be able to express herself and speak her truth or whatever nonsense, regardless of the consequences to everybody else.
As more people in the know begin to come forward, the general consensus seems to be forming that the drama surrounding Zegler is no longer just an unfortunate side story, but a central cause of the film's spiraling downfall. And that is how the narrative begins, not with the film itself, but with a breakdown in leadership, accountability, and professionalism among its core cast. Long before any public feuds emerged or press tours turned into political soapboxes, the Snow White production was already collapsing under the weight of its own structural failures. Behind the polished facade of Disney's usual big-budget fantasy rollout was a project riddled with issues from day one. Reports indicate that the creative direction of the film was unclear, marked by repeated changes to the storyline, last-minute script rewrites, and extensive reshoots. The source material, originally a timeless, whimsical fairy tale, was allegedly stripped of its charm in favor of contemporary themes that didn't resonate with its intended audience.
And that's apart from all of the political controversy started by the actress. So the movie had all kinds of problems creatively and conceptually.
Producers and executives struggled to maintain a coherent vision, and the internal chaos eventually spilled over into every aspect of the production. Directors found themselves rescheduling scenes due to cast tensions, while post-production staff were reportedly overwhelmed trying to piece together a fragmented narrative that had changed shape multiple times. Each attempt to salvage the movie introduced more inconsistencies, further inflating the budget while draining the creative momentum. The final product, by all accounts, is a reflection of that chaos, a disjointed film lacking emotional resonance and weighed down by constant behind-the-scenes turmoil. From a structural standpoint, the Snow White remake appears to be less of a creative endeavor and more of a cautionary tale of how not to manage a large-scale cinematic adaptation. One of the most polarizing elements of this unfolding disaster has been Rachel Zegler's public commentary about the film and its creative direction.
These people, and this is the difference between a business owner or someone who does very well for themselves in the private sector to become wealthy. This person was born looking a certain way and has a God-given ability.
Early in the press cycle, Zegler made waves when she openly criticized the original 1937 Snow White narrative, dismissing its romantic themes and asserting that her version would eliminate the focus on a love story. According to her, the reimagined Snow White would not dream of finding a prince, but rather of becoming a leader. While this may have been framed as a progressive reinterpretation, it immediately drew backlash from fans who viewed the statement as dismissive, if not outright disrespectful, of a beloved classic. These comments were seen by many as emblematic of a broader Hollywood trend that favors political messaging over storytelling. Her words were amplified by news outlets, dissected across social media platforms, and turned into flashpoints in a larger cultural debate about what it means to modernize a fairy tale. The fallout was swift. What should have been a straightforward promotional campaign became a polarizing debate over ideology, legacy, and audience expectations.
This is what theaters look like across the world, and it just keeps getting worse. The memes.
The creative liberties taken by the film were no longer just artistic choices. They were perceived as part of a broader agenda, one that alienated core Disney audiences. In the end, Zegler's
Queen should
framing
be
of the movie
portrayed,
as
or how
instructive
modern Snow
rather
White's
than
character
entertaining
arc should
only
be,
deepened
sprang
the
up like
divide.
wildfire.
For a project that
Simultaneously,
relies on nostalgia and broad appeal, this was a fatal miscalculation. What should have been a standard promotional tour became a parade of absences, miscommunication, and missed opportunities. When studios invest heavily in blockbuster films, one of their biggest assets is the ability to send stars on coordinated global tours to drum up excitement and goodwill. In the case of Snow White, that strategy was rendered useless. Joint appearances featuring Rachel Zegler and Gal Gadot were conspicuously absent, while photo shoots and press events became battlegrounds over positioning, visibility, and personal space. One of the most visible fractures occurred when Zegler reportedly refused to attend a Hollywood ceremony honoring Gadot. Studio insiders had hoped that a public show of solidarity could tamp down rumors of animosity between the leads. Instead, the refusal served as confirmation that the rift was deeper than anyone had imagined.
For a living. That's really what acting is, to pretend. They didn't earn it the same way, and so it comes with this entitlement.
Following this incident, more scheduled events began falling apart. Photo shoots were rescheduled,
effects.
then canceled.
Still, the studio was
Interview
banking on the
segments were
combined
trimmed or
star
scrapped
power of
altogether.
Rachel's to in droves.
As the tension grew,
Then
so
came
did
the
the logistical
post-production
nightmares.
phase, when directors
With
and
each canceled
editors,
event,
responding to
Disney
disheartening
lost
test
another
screening
opportunity to shift the narrative away from drama and toward the film itself. Instead of showcasing the film's creative vision, the marketing campaign became a series of damage control maneuvers, each one less effective than the last. In the absence of a unified message, the public filled in the blanks with speculation and rumor. And for a studio like Disney, silence in the face of controversy is rarely interpreted favorably.
Rachel Zegler went to go see Snow White. What do you notice about the theater? There's no one. Rachel Zegler is sitting in an empty movie theater watching her movie, giggling hysterically and maniacally.
In the modern entertainment landscape, social media is both a blessing and a curse. For Rachel Zegler, it became the latter. Instead of carefully curated statements designed to support the film and its themes, Zegler's social media presence often devolved into emotionally charged posts that alienated fans and confused casual observers. Whether she was issuing politically motivated calls to action, mocking traditional storytelling tropes, or clapping back at criticism with sarcasm, Zegler's online persona did not serve the film's promotional goals. In fact, it directly undermined them. Her insistence on presenting the film as a teaching moment, rather than a form of escapist entertainment, reinforced the belief that Snow White was being used as a vehicle for ideological messaging. As the backlash mounted, the studio reportedly issued Zegler a set of guidelines for interview responses and fan engagement. These included advice on avoiding inflammatory remarks and staying on message.
You know, I don't need your business. You know what? Maybe Disney does. Maybe you're a tool, you're a pawn in this film. You didn't write it, you didn't direct it, you have nothing to do with the creation of Snow White.
Right.
You should shut up and do the job.
But even that effort appeared to have little impact. Zegler continued to speak out in ways that drew controversy and polarized viewers. What should have been a standard marketing rollout transformed into a series of viral firestorms, each one dragging the film further into the realm of cultural debate rather than cinematic celebration. In today's climate, public image is everything, and Zegler's mishandling of hers may have been one of the most damaging elements of this already troubled release. One of the most contentious decisions made during the early stages of the Snow White remake was the replacement of the 7 traditional dwarves with a group of magical, CGI-enhanced creatures inspired by diversity and inclusion initiatives. While the studio may have intended this move as a gesture of progressiveness, the backlash was immediate and intense. Critics accused Disney of eliminating meaningful representation for little people in favor of vague, fantastical stand-ins that served no real narrative function. Even some within the industry expressed dismay at the studio's handling of this issue, arguing that such decisions were made without proper consultation and lacked cultural sensitivity.
That's really what acting is, to pretend. They didn't earn it the same way, and so it comes with this entitlement.
The controversy only compounded the sense that the film was trying to correct a problem that didn't exist, and in the process, created an entirely new one. Instead of fostering inclusivity, the change appeared to many as performative and ultimately disrespectful to a community that had historically been excluded from mainstream roles. As the controversy surrounding the cast escalated, this decision stood out as one of the most avoidable missteps. In trying to preempt backlash, the studio ironically invited even more. The CGI replacements didn't merely alter the aesthetic of the film, they became a symbol for what many critics saw as a studio disconnected from its fan base and overly focused on optics rather than authenticity. In a film already suffering from production woes and cast disputes, this particular element added yet another layer of confusion and dissatisfaction that continued to haunt the film's public image.
These people, and this is the difference between a business owner or someone who does very well for themselves in the private sector to become wealthy. This person was born looking a certain way and has a God-given ability to lie.
As the situation around the Snow White remake continued to deteriorate, industry professionals began to take note of the larger implications. Beyond the immediate concerns of box office performance or public perception, casting directors and producers started expressing serious reservations about working with Rachel Zegler in future projects. Her behavior during press tours, her refusal to participate in key promotional events, and her increasingly controversial public statements created a reputation for unpredictability. In an industry that values reliable, marketable stars, these patterns became red flags. Insiders have reportedly discussed Zegler's potential as a high-risk hire, someone who could draw attention for the wrong reasons and bring unnecessary friction to already complex productions. While it is too early to tell whether this situation will have long-term effects on her career,
Pickup shots were scheduled,
short-term
requiring
consequences
Gal
are
and Rachel
already
to return
visible.
to set. By this
Offers
time,
may slow. Roles that were once within reach might quietly disappear. The issue isn't about talent. Zegler is recognized for her vocal abilities and on-screen presence. The issue is about trust, professionalism, and public relations.
There's no doubt that she drove the final nail into this movie's coffin. She probably drove the final 2 or 3 nails into the coffin.
And for an actress at this stage in her career, losing the trust of studios and PR handlers could be incredibly damaging. The Snow White fiasco has done more than damage a single film. It has altered how decision-makers perceive the people attached to it. And as the dust continues to settle, the professional fallout may stretch far beyond the opening weekend. From a financial perspective, the Snow White remake represents a looming disaster. Initial reports estimate the budget exceeded $250 million, a figure driven not only by standard production costs, but also by unforeseen expenses tied to script rewrites, reshoots, promotional setbacks, and PR damage control. When a film of this scale is developed, every dollar is expected to yield a return through a carefully calibrated combination of theatrical revenue, international distribution, merchandise sales, and streaming rights. But in this case, those projections appear increasingly out of reach. Early ticket pre-sales are tepid at best, and social media buzz, ordinarily a helpful indicator of fan enthusiasm, is dominated by controversy, skepticism, and outright disdain. Industry analysts warn that even a moderate turnout won't be enough to recoup the bloated budget, especially given the additional marketing costs required to rehabilitate the movie's tarnished image. Add to that the lack of cooperation between the film's 2 leads and the inability to coordinate high-impact press appearances, and the financial picture looks even worse. In the film industry, perception plays a critical role in performance. When audiences associate a title with tension, negativity, and ideological feuding, they're less likely to view it as a must-see event. Instead, they might wait for streaming, skip it altogether, or choose to support something else. And for Disney, a company that prides itself on dominating the family film space, this represents more than just a box office failure. It's a warning sign, a case study, and potentially a very expensive mistake. Snow White has long held a special place in the Disney canon, being the studio's first ever full-length animated feature and a cultural touchstone for generations. When Disney announced a live-action reimagining of the tale, many expected it to build on the magic of the original while introducing fresh elements to appeal to modern viewers. But somewhere along the way, the emotional core of the story was lost. The whimsical charm, the innocence, and the simplicity of the fairy tale were replaced with overt messaging and personal agendas that didn't resonate with longtime fans. What should have been a celebration of a timeless story, instead became a flashpoint for cultural debates, internet backlash, and press scandals. Audiences who typically support Disney remakes found themselves turned off by the public feuding, the lack of respect for the original story, and the seemingly forced reinvention of characters and themes. Parents who might have taken their children to see a nostalgic fairy tale hesitated, unsure whether the film would reflect the values they associated with the brand. And casual moviegoers, inundated with headlines about clashing egos and political commentary, simply tuned out. The disconnect between what audiences hoped for and what they received was stark, and that disconnect became the defining characteristic of the film's public image. In trying to modernize a classic, Disney inadvertently removed
decided
the
to
very
retool
qualities that made
significant
it
chunks
worth
of the film's
revisiting in the
tone.
first place.
Additional
As the final weeks before the Snow White release play out, it's clear that the film's legacy is already in jeopardy. What began as a high-profile remake backed by Disney's marketing machine has devolved into a symbol of internal chaos, poor planning, and misaligned priorities. The feud between Rachel Zegler and Gal Gadot didn't just derail the promotional campaign, it became the story. And as much as the studio has tried to shift attention back to the movie itself, the damage is done. Industry insiders now refer to the Snow White project as a cautionary tale, a textbook example of how personal conflicts, unchecked
was at an
commentary,
all-time high.
and
Crew members
overambitious
privately
rebranding
expressed
can sink a
concerns that
production
the
before
negative
it even
energy
reaches
radiating between the
audiences.
two leads would
Future casting decisions will likely be influenced by this outcome. Studios may demand stronger contracts around promotional duties, stricter PR oversight, and earlier conflict resolution measures during pre-production. The need for harmony among cast members is no longer just a soft benefit. It is a financial and creative necessity. The Snow White remake, intended to revitalize a beloved tale, has instead exposed the fault lines in Disney's approach to modern storytelling. Whether the film manages to eke out a modest box office return or collapses entirely under the weight of its controversies, the takeaway remains the same. When the focus shifts from story to spectacle, from collaboration to conflict, from timelessness to tension, audiences will notice, and they will walk away. In the end, no amount of CGI or rebranding can replace the simple, powerful magic of a story told with heart, unity, and respect for its roots.